This is the Paltalk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet, with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube, and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show, and I recommend that you go to paltalknewsnetwork.com on a regular basis to read stories that you may or may not see, hear, or read in the mainstream media. There are a number of stories on the front page of today's Paltalk News Network site. I'm going to talk about a couple of them here. I want your reactions to them. Number one, very interestingly, and for those of you who are conservative and want to attribute this to a mean-spirited liberal news media, I got to tell you that the newspaper that broke the following story was the Washington Times, which is far from a liberal newspaper. They ran an investigative piece today which says that more than a dozen Republican congressmen who have publicly opposed the stimulus package have gone to one department of many participating in the recovery program, the Recovery Act, and have requested tens of millions of dollars each for programs for their districts. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that it is politics as usual, even in these dire times in Washington, D.C., where congressmen who are supportive of responsible fiscal policies in Washington also are more concerned about bringing the bacon home to their districts. And so they publicly denounce programs that they themselves want to reach into the public trough to bring the money home, the pork, to their districts. Now, this, of course, is not something that is unique to the Republican Party. What makes it interesting here is that these Republicans have been pretty strong in their condemnation of the stimulus package because it's, of course, a Democratic administration that pushed it through. But they're more than willing to take advantage of it themselves, aren't they? And I find that pretty disgusting and disingenuous, and I'm sorry that things haven't changed at all as a result of this horrific financial crisis that the nation finds itself in. That these congressmen are more interested, if they believe in cutting down on spending and they oppose the stimulus spending, then they should be true to their convictions. But they're more interested in getting reelected. That's more important than properly serving their constituents. And if bringing projects to their communities helps get them reelected, then they will do that instead. I also wrote a piece today about France fighting for its national identity. From now on, if you emigrate to France, then you have to basically sign a pledge saying that you adhere and agree to adhere to the values of French society. Because the problem there has been, ladies and gentlemen, there have been so many immigrants who have come to their nation. And unlike in the United States, where we don't have a monolithic cultural background, but one that is based on many backgrounds. and in which we embrace the various cultures that are represented by the people who have emigrated to the United States as part of the fiber of this nation. European nations, of course, are not like that. The people in France are French. The people in England are English. The people in Sweden are Swedish. And what has happened is that there's been such an influx of immigrants, which is fine. But the problem that the French have, and the problem that I have even here in the United States, is when an immigrant comes to my country, and when an immigrant comes to France, that they should at least be respectful of the culture of that country. And I point out that when the French national anthem was played at a soccer tournament, the people who were there to cheer on those from their native lands against the French, which is fine, I don't particularly have a problem with that, jeered when the French national anthem was played. Excuse me, that's not respectful to your adoptive nation. And so the French are trying to correct that there, and of course are being accused of being anti-Muslim because the majority of those who have recently emigrated in large numbers to their nation happen to be Muslim. And I guess it is believed by some that by imposing this measure, which also includes the playing of the national anthem at schools and the display of the French flag in schools to promote patriotism, is somehow anti-Muslim. I wonder what would happen if somebody from France, along with a large number of fellow French people, moved to Saudi Arabia or Morocco or some other Middle Eastern nation, which was predominantly Islamic, and jeered when the national anthem of that country was played. I don't think it would be acceptable, nor should it be. And if the Saudis or the Moroccans or the Jordanians were to say, you can't do that, we won't permit it, does that now make them anti-French or anti-Christian? I don't think so. When you go to a foreign land, yes, you are supposed to, the people who are indigenous to that country, accept strangers in their midst as their own. But the strangers, the visitors, are supposed to be respectful of the values of those nations. I get irritated when people move to the United States of America and then work to bring down the very fiber of this nation. Now, of course, in our country, we value freedom of speech at almost all costs, with very rare exceptions.